She had everything the corporate world promised would make her happy, until the day she realized she was living someone else's dream and whispered the two words that changed everything. Don't resist. Maya had been sitting in the same chair for what felt like hours, but the clock on the wall showed it was only 2:30 p.m. The boardroom smelled like expensive coffee and disappointment. She watched the raindrops race down the tall windows, each one reminding her of the 15 years she had spent climbing this mountain of corporate success. At 38, Maya was the youngest senior partner at Anderson Consulting. Her colleagues respected her, clients trusted her, and her salary was more than she had ever dreamed of as a young woman growing up in a small town. Yet sitting there in that leather chair, wearing her perfectly pressed suit, she felt like she was drowning. The meeting had started like any other Tuesday afternoon gathering. The usual faces around the polished table, the same small talk about weekend plans and quarterly numbers. But then Mr. Anderson, the company's founder and CEO, stood up with his signature smile and made an announcement that would change everything. "I'm pleased to introduce our new Chief Operating Officer," he said, gesturing toward the man sitting 2 seats away from Maya. "David will be taking over all major operations starting next month." The room erupted in polite applause. Maya's hands moved automatically, clapping along with everyone else, but inside her chest something cracked. David had joined the company 3 years after her. 3 years. She had trained him when he first arrived, helped him understand their biggest clients, and watched him stumble through presentations that she could deliver in her sleep. Maya smiled and nodded when David caught her eye across the table. She even congratulated him when the meeting ended, shaking his hand firmly and saying all the right things. But as everyone filed out of the room, chattering excitedly about the promotion, Maya remained seated. This wasn't the first time. 2 years ago, it was Robert who got the executive position she had been working toward. Before that, it was Thomas who was promoted to head of the West Coast division. All good men, all capable in their own ways, but none with her track record or her results. Maya had brought in more revenue than any other senior partner for the past 5 years. Her client retention rate was nearly perfect. She worked weekends, missed family dinners, and had canceled more vacations than she could count. She had given this company everything, and still, the glass ceiling felt more like concrete. The cleaning lady knocked softly on the boardroom door, interrupting Maya's thoughts. "Sorry, miss, are you finished in here?" Maya looked up at the kind woman who had been working in their building for as long as she could remember. "Yes, I'm done, thank you." As she walked back to her corner office, Maya passed the photos lining the hallway. 15 years of company achievements, team celebrations, and milestone moments. She appeared in many of them, always professional, always smiling. But looking at them now, she felt like she was staring at pictures of someone else's life. Her office overlooked the busy street below. From the 23rd floor, the people looked like tiny ants hurrying to their next destination. Maya had always loved this view. It made her feel important, successful, like she had really made it in the world. Today, it just made her feel trapped. She sat down at her desk and opened her laptop, but instead of checking emails, she found herself staring at the blank screen. Her reflection looked back at her from the dark monitor. Tired eyes, stressed lines around her mouth, and an expression that had become all too familiar. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "How was your day? Still think you'll get that? Promotion soon?" Maya stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "Today was interesting. I'll call you later." As the office emptied around her, Maya remained at her desk. The cleaning crew arrived, working quietly around her as they emptied trash bins and wiped down surfaces. The security guard made his evening rounds, nodding at her through the glass walls of her office. It was almost 9 o'clock when her assistant, Lisa, appeared at her door. Lisa had been with the company for 12 years and had seen it all. She was one of the few people who truly understood how hard Maya worked and how much she deserved recognition. "Maya, you've been here since 6 this morning," Lisa said gently. "Maybe it's time to head home?" Maya looked up from her computer screen, realizing she hadn't actually done any work for the past several hours. She had been sitting there, lost, in thought, replaying every moment of her career and wondering where she had gone wrong. "Lisa," Maya said, her voice quiet but clear. "Have you ever felt like you're fighting a battle you can never win?" Lisa stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. "Every day," she admitted. "But I've watched you fight battles that others said were impossible, and you've won most of them. But not the ones that really matter," Maya replied, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle below. "Not the ones that would actually change things." Lisa sat down in the chair across from Maya's desk. "What are you thinking?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her words came out as barely a whisper. "Maybe it's time to stop fighting their battle and start fighting my own. Maybe I need to stop resisting the change that's been calling to me and take the first step myself." The next morning, Maya arrived at the office earlier than usual. She had spent most of the night awake, thinking about her conversation with Lisa and about the path her life had taken. By the time the sun came up, she knew what she had to do. She opened her laptop and began typing a letter she had been composing, in her mind for years. A letter that would change everything. A letter that would set her free from the concrete ceiling that had kept her down for so long. The resignation letter was surprisingly short. After 15 years of dedication, it took only 2 paragraphs to officially end her time at Anderson Consulting. As she printed the letter and placed it in an envelope addressed to Mr. Anderson, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about what came next. The first morning without a job felt like stepping off a cliff. Maya woke up at her usual 5:30 a.m., reached for her phone to check work emails, and then remembered there were no work emails anymore. For the first time in 15 years, her calendar was completely empty. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table, staring out the window at her neighbors rushing to catch their morning trains. Just yesterday, she was one of them. Today, she was unemployed, and the word felt heavy in her mouth every time she thought it. Her savings account showed a comfortable number, enough to last at least a year if she was careful. But Maya had never been unemployed as an adult. The uncertainty felt like a constant weight in her stomach. What if she had made a terrible mistake? What if she never found anything as good as what she had left behind? Her phone started ringing around 9 o'clock. First, it was Lisa, her former assistant, calling to check on her. Then came calls from colleagues who had heard the news. Each conversation was the same uncomfortable dance of explaining why she had left such a prestigious position without having another job lined up. "You did what?" her mother asked during their daily phone call. "Maya, honey, you can't just quit a good job without a plan. What are you going to do now?" Maya didn't have an answer. She had acted on instinct, on a feeling that she couldn't ignore anymore. But now, sitting in her quiet apartment, with nowhere to be and nothing urgent to do, she wondered if her instincts had failed her. The first week blurred together. Maya spent her days applying for similar positions at other consulting firms, sending out dozens of resumes and cover letters. But something felt wrong about going back to the same type of environment that had frustrated her so much. Still, she needed to be practical. The rejection emails started arriving by the second week. Some were polite form letters, others never replied at all. A few companies called for phone interviews, but when they asked why she had left Anderson Consulting without having another position secured, Maya struggled to give an answer that made sense to them. "It sounds like you made an impulsive decision," one interviewer said bluntly. "That's concerning for someone we'd be trusting with client relationships." Maya hung up the phone feeling smaller than she had in years. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe she had acted foolishly. By the third week, Maya had stopped getting dressed in business attire every morning. She worked from her couch in comfortable clothes, laptop balanced on her knees, applying for jobs that felt increasingly desperate. She expanded her search beyond consulting, looking at corporate strategy roles, project management positions, anything that might pay the bills. Her sister called one evening, worried about how quiet Maya had become during their recent conversations. "You don't sound like yourself," she said. "When was the last time you left your apartment?" Maya realized. She couldn't remember. The grocery delivery service had become her best friend, and she had been ordering takeout more often than she cared to admit. She was living like someone hiding from the world. "I think I made a huge mistake," Maya confessed to her sister. "I had security, respect, good money. And I threw it all away for what? To sit here in my pajamas getting rejected by companies that aren't half as good as where I used to work?" Her sister was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember when we were kids, and you used to talk about having your own business someday? You'd set up these elaborate pretend offices in your bedroom and make me be your first client." Maya smiled despite her mood. She had forgotten about those games. "That was different. I was 8 years old and didn't understand how the real world works." "Maybe the real world doesn't work the way we think it should," her sister replied. "Maybe that's why you felt so trapped at your old job." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She found herself thinking about those childhood games, about the dreams she had before she learned to be practical and realistic. She had wanted to help businesses solve their biggest problems, but somewhere along the way that dream had gotten buried under office politics and corporate hierarchy. She got up and made tea, then sat at her kitchen table with a notebook. Instead of updating her resume or searching job boards, she started writing down ideas. What if she didn't go back to working for someone else? What if she tried to build something of her own? The idea felt both thrilling and terrifying. She had no experience running a business. She didn't have a network of contacts who would hire an independent consultant. She didn't even have a clear plan for what services she would offer. But as she wrote, filling page after page with possibilities, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since leaving Anderson Consulting. Excitement about the future. The next morning, she called her former colleague Jennifer, who had left the corporate world 2 years earlier to start her own marketing firm. Maya had always admired Jennifer's courage, but had never seriously considered following a similar path. "The first year was the hardest thing I've ever done," Jennifer told her honestly. "There were days I wanted to crawl back to my old boss and beg for my job back. But Maya, I've never been happier. I work with clients I actually care about on projects that matter to me. And yes, I make less money than I used to, but I sleep better at night." After their conversation, Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of sending out more job applications, she spent the afternoon researching how to start a consulting business. She read articles about business licenses, tax requirements, and marketing strategies. She looked up courses on entrepreneurship and small business management. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt like she was moving forward instead of just surviving. She was still scared, still uncertain about the future, but she was no longer just waiting for someone else to give her permission to succeed. That evening, she opened her laptop and began typing the first draft of a business plan. She had whispered to herself about not resisting change, and now it was time to take the first real step into her unknown future. Maya's spare bedroom had been transformed into something that barely resembled an office, but it was hers. A folding table from the garage served as her desk. Her old laptop hummed louder than she remembered, and she had printed her business cards at the local copy shop for $30. Maya Chen Consulting was officially born, even if it looked nothing like the corporate world she had left behind. The first month was a masterclass in rejection. Maya reached out to everyone in her professional network, explaining her new venture with carefully crafted emails that tried to sound confident and established. Most people were polite but non-committal. Some never replied at all. A few former clients from Anderson Consulting expressed interest but worried about working with a one-person operation. "I understand you're talented, Maya," one potential client told her during a phone call. "But we need someone with infrastructure, with a team. What happens if you get sick or overwhelmed? We can't risk our project timeline." Maya hung up feeling like she was back in those early job interviews, trying to prove herself all over again. But this time, she didn't have the safety net of a steady paycheck or the credibility of a famous company name on her business card. Her savings account balance became a daily source of anxiety. She had calculated that she could survive for 10 months without income. But watching the number slowly decrease each month was like watching sand slip through an hourglass. Rent, groceries, insurance, business expenses, it all added up faster than she had expected. The breakthrough that changed everything happened on a rainy Tuesday in November. Maya was sitting in her neighborhood coffee shop, trying to look busy and professional while secretly wondering if anyone would hire a consultant working from a corner table, when she overheard a heated phone conversation at the next table. The woman was clearly frustrated, speaking in rapid English mixed with what sounded like Spanish, gesturing wildly with her free hand. Maya tried not to eavesdrop, but the woman's voice carried and certain words caught her attention. Cash flow crisis, operational nightmare, and nobody understands our situation. When the woman hung up and put her head in her hands, Maya found herself walking over. "I'm sorry to bother you," Maya said carefully, "but I couldn't help overhearing. I'm a business consultant, and it sounds like you might be dealing with some challenges I've helped other companies solve." The woman looked up with tired eyes and introduced herself as Rosa, the owner of a small tech startup. Rosa had been trying to get help from several consulting firms, but they all wanted massive retainer fees up front and didn't seem to understand the unique challenges facing a minority-owned business trying to scale quickly. "The big firms, they look at our numbers and see us as too small to matter," Rosa explained. "But the small business advisors, they don't understand our technology or our growth potential. We're stuck in the middle, burning through our funding, while we try to figure out operations that are getting more complicated every day." Maya spent the next 2 hours listening to Rosa's story. The company had developed an innovative app that was gaining users rapidly, but their back-end systems couldn't handle the growth. They were hiring new employees but had no real onboarding process. Their customer service was overwhelmed, and their financial tracking was a mess of spreadsheets that no one fully understood. It was exactly the kind of complex, multi-layered problem that Maya loved solving. More importantly, she could see herself in Rosa's frustration with systems that weren't built for companies like theirs. "I know this might sound crazy," Maya said finally, "but what if I worked with you on a trial basis? No huge upfront payment, no long-term contract. Give me 2 weeks to understand your operations, and if I can't add real value, you pay me nothing." Rosa stared at her for a long moment. "You would do that? Take that kind of risk?" Maya nodded, feeling more certain than she had in months. Sometimes, the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all. The next 2 weeks were the hardest Maya had worked since leaving Anderson Consulting, but also the most energizing. She spent entire days at Rosa's office, which was a converted warehouse space filled with young developers and designers who worked at standing desks made from plywood and sawhorses. Maya dove into their systems like a detective solving a mystery. She mapped out their customer journey, analyzed their operational bottlenecks, and interviewed every employee to understand how work actually got done versus how the management thought it got done. The problems were even worse than Rosa had described, but Maya could see clear solutions. Within a week, she had created a restructuring plan that would streamline their operations, improve customer response times, and give Rosa the financial visibility she desperately needed. "This is exactly what we needed," Rosa said, reviewing Maya's recommendations. "How did you see all this so quickly when the other consultants couldn't?" Maya thought about the question. "Maybe because I understand what it feels like to be underestimated by systems that weren't designed for people like us." By the end of the 2-week trial, Rosa's company had implemented half of Maya's suggestions and was already seeing improvements. Customer complaints dropped by 40%, and their development team was shipping new features faster than ever before. "I want to hire you for the full project," Rosa said. "And I want to pay you what you're actually worth, not some discounted rate." The contract Rosa offered was smaller than what Maya used to handle at Anderson Consulting, but it felt more meaningful. She wasn't just optimizing operations for a corporation that would barely notice the improvements. She was helping a fellow entrepreneur build something from the ground up. Word spread quickly through the local startup community. Rosa mentioned Maya to other business owners, and soon Maya was getting calls from companies she had never heard of. They were small businesses, family-owned operations, and startups led by people who had been overlooked by traditional consulting firms. By December, Maya had 3 active clients and a waiting list of potential projects. Her spare bedroom office was getting crowded with files and planning materials. For the first time since leaving Anderson Consulting, she was making more money than she was spending. More importantly, she was doing work that mattered to her, with people who valued her perspective and expertise. She had found her first step and it was leading somewhere she had never expected to go. Maya's business had grown beyond her wildest expectations by January 2020. What started in her spare bedroom had expanded to a small office downtown, complete with a conference room and space for the 4 employees she had hired. Her client list included tech startups, family restaurants, local nonprofits, and even a few mid-sized companies that had heard about her work through word of mouth. She was finally feeling confident about her decision to leave the corporate world. The business was profitable, her team was talented and motivated, and she was doing work that actually made a difference in people's lives. Maya had even started speaking at local business events, sharing her story of corporate burnout and entrepreneurial success. Then March arrived, and everything changed overnight. The first sign of trouble came when Rosa called, her voice tight, with worry. "Maya, we need to talk. Our investors are pulling back and we might need to pause our contract for a few months." Within a week, similar calls started pouring in. The pandemic had hit the business world like a tsunami, and Maya's clients were among the first to feel the impact. Small businesses and startups, the backbone of her consulting practice, were suddenly fighting for survival. Her newest client, a chain of boutique fitness studios, canceled their contract entirely. "We're closing all our locations indefinitely," the owner explained during a painful phone call. "I'm sorry, Maya. I know this puts you in a tough spot, too." Maya sat in her empty office staring at the lease agreement she had signed just 6 months earlier. The rent was due in 2 weeks and she had payroll to meet for her 4 employees. Her business income had dropped by 70% almost overnight, but her expenses remained exactly the same. The responsible thing would have been to let her team go immediately, break the office lease, and try to ride out the storm alone. Maya had seen other business owners make those difficult decisions, and she understood the logic behind them. But looking at her employees working from their homes, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy during an unprecedented crisis, she couldn't bring herself to add to their uncertainty. Instead, she made a decision that her former corporate colleagues would have called financially reckless. She decided to pivot rather than retreat. Maya had noticed something during those early weeks of lockdown. While many businesses were struggling, others needed help more than ever. Restaurants were desperately trying to figure out delivery and takeout operations. Retail stores needed to build online presence overnight. Healthcare practices were scrambling to implement telemedicine. These businesses couldn't afford traditional consulting fees, but they needed guidance urgently. She called a team meeting on a Friday afternoon, everyone joining from their home offices via video call. Maya was honest about the situation they were facing. 3 of their biggest clients had paused contracts, 2 others had reduced their scope significantly, and the pipeline of new business had dried up completely. "I have 2 options," she told her team. "I can lay everyone off and try to survive this alone, or we can try something that might be crazy enough to work. But I need everyone on board if we're going to make it happen." Her proposal was simple but risky. Instead of waiting for clients to find them, they would proactively reach out to struggling businesses and offer emergency consulting packages. Not the comprehensive, months-long engagements they usually provided, but focused, short-term projects designed to help businesses adapt quickly to the new reality. The packages would be affordable enough for small businesses to manage, but they would need to work with many more clients to generate the same revenue. It meant longer hours, faster turnaround times, and learning about industries they had never worked in before. "It's going to be exhausting," Maya admitted, "and honestly, I don't know if it will work, but I'd rather try something new than just give up on what we've built." Her team surprised her with their enthusiasm. Within 2 weeks, they had developed 3 different service packages: emergency operations consulting for restaurants and retail stores, digital transformation help for traditional businesses forced online, and crisis management support for nonprofits trying to continue their missions during lockdown. Maya started reaching out to businesses that had never considered hiring a consultant before. She called the corner bakery that was struggling with online orders, the family-owned bookstore trying to set up curbside pickup, and the local yoga instructor who needed help moving her classes online. The work was different from anything Maya had done before. Instead of lengthy analysis and formal presentations, she was providing quick solutions and hands-on implementation support. She helped a pizza restaurant redesign their entire ordering system in 3 days. She taught a jewelry designer how to run virtual trunk shows that actually increased her sales compared to in-person events. Most surprisingly, Maya discovered that many of these smaller businesses were more innovative and adaptable than the large corporations she used to serve. They made decisions quickly, implemented changes immediately, and weren't held back by layers of bureaucracy and committee approvals. By summer, Maya's business had not only survived the initial crisis but was thriving in ways she had never expected. Her team was busier than ever, working with dozens of clients across industries they had never imagined serving. The work was more varied, more challenging, and somehow more satisfying than the predictable corporate projects of the past. The pandemic had forced Maya to completely rethink what her business could be. Instead of working with a small number of large clients, she was now helping countless small businesses navigate the biggest challenge of their existence. Instead of lengthy engagements that sometimes took months to show results, she was solving immediate problems and seeing the impact of her work within days. More importantly, Maya realized that the crisis had revealed something she had never fully understood about herself. She didn't just want to be successful in business. She wanted to be part of something bigger than herself. She wanted to help build a more resilient, more equitable economy where small businesses could compete and thrive. As she looked back on that frightening March day when everything seemed to be falling apart, Maya understood that sometimes the worst moments create the best opportunities. The pandemic hadn't destroyed her business. It had transformed it into something better than she had ever imagined possible. The auditorium was packed with more people than Maya had expected. As she stood backstage at the University Business School, adjusting her microphone and trying to calm her nerves, she could hear the buzz of conversation from the audience. It was October 2021, exactly 2.5 years since she had walked out of Anderson Consulting with nothing but a resignation letter and a dream she couldn't yet name. Her assistant, Kevin, appeared beside her with a bottle of water and an encouraging smile. 5 minutes until showtime, he said. The audience looks great. Lots of students, some faculty, and I spotted several business owners I recognize from the local scene. Maya nodded, taking a sip of water while reviewing her speaking notes one final time. She had given presentations to corporate boardrooms filled with executives, but somehow this felt more important. These were people at crossroads in their own lives, trying to figure out which path to take. As she walked onto the stage, Maya spotted familiar faces in the audience. Rosa was there, sitting in the third row with several other entrepreneurs Maya had worked with over the years. Even more surprising, she recognized Mr. Anderson from her former company, sitting toward the back with what looked like genuine interest on his face. "Good evening, everyone," Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a corporate boardroom watching a colleague get promoted to a position I had been working toward for 15 years. I went home that night and made a decision that everyone around me thought was completely crazy. The audience was quiet, attentive. Maya could feel their interest as she continued. I left a 6-figure salary, a prestigious company, and 15 years of security to start over with nothing but an idea that I could do things differently. Tonight I want to share what I learned about taking that first terrifying step into the unknown. Maya talked about the early days of uncertainty, the rejection letters, and the moments when she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. She shared the story of meeting Rosa in the coffee shop, and how that chance encounter taught her that sometimes the biggest opportunities come from helping people who are overlooked by traditional systems. The moment I whispered, "Don't resist," to myself was the moment I stopped waiting for permission to create the career I wanted, she told the audience. But the real transformation happened when I took the first step myself, without knowing where it would lead. She described the challenges of the pandemic, and how what seemed like a business-ending crisis actually became the catalyst for her company's greatest growth. She talked about the restaurant owners who had never hired a consultant before, the small business owners who taught her more about innovation than any corporate training program ever had. "We like to think that success means climbing a ladder that someone else built," Maya said, But sometimes the most meaningful success comes from building your own ladder and then helping other people climb it too. When she opened the floor for questions, hands shot up throughout the auditorium. Students asked about overcoming fear of failure. Business owners wanted to know about managing cash flow during uncertain times. Several people asked for specific advice about leaving corporate careers to start their own ventures. One question came from a young woman in the front row who reminded Maya of herself at that age. Professional attire, confident posture, but something uncertain in her eyes. "I'm graduating with my MBA next month," the woman said. "I have offers from 3 consulting firms, all good positions with great starting salaries. But I also have an idea for a business that could help companies improve their environmental sustainability practices. Everyone tells me I should take the safe corporate job first, build experience, and maybe try entrepreneurship later. What would you do?" Maya smiled, recognizing the familiar struggle between security and possibility. "Can I ask you a question? First, when you think about working at one of those consulting firms for the next 5 years, how does that feel in your body?" The woman was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, like settling for someone else's version of success instead of creating my own." "Then you already have your answer," Maya said. "The corporate job will always be there. But the person you are right now, with the energy and passion you have for your idea, that version of yourself won't wait around forever. Sometimes the safest choice is actually the riskiest one, because it asks you to sacrifice who you could become for who you think you should be." After the formal presentation ended, people lingered in the auditorium, forming small groups and continuing conversations. Maya was surrounded by students and business owners, all eager to share their stories and ask for advice. She realized that this was what she loved most about her journey, not just the success of her own business, but the opportunity to encourage others to take their own brave steps. As the crowd began to thin out, Mr. Anderson approached her. Maya had wondered if this moment would feel awkward, but instead, she felt only curiosity about what he might say. "Maya, that was an impressive presentation," he said, extending his hand for a handshake. "I have to admit, when you left Anderson Consulting, I thought you were making a mistake. But watching what you've built and hearing how you've helped so many businesses through the pandemic, I think you found exactly what you were meant to do." He paused, looking almost embarrassed. "Actually, I was hoping we might talk about a potential partnership. Anderson Consulting has been getting requests from clients for the kind of agile, responsive support that your company provides. We could use someone who understands both worlds." Maya smiled at the irony. 2.5 years ago, she had walked away from this company feeling like a failure. Now they were asking if they could learn from what she had built. "I'd be happy to explore that conversation," she said. "But I should warn you, I do things very differently now than I did when I worked for you." As Maya packed up her materials and prepared to leave the auditorium, she felt a deep sense of completion. Not because her journey was over, but because she finally understood what it had been about from the beginning. She hadn't just built a successful business. She had created a life that aligned with her values and gave her the freedom to help others do the same. The young woman who had asked about the corporate job versus entrepreneurship appeared at her side as Maya headed toward the exit. "Thank you for what you said tonight," the woman said. "I think I know what I need to do now." Maya handed her a business card. "Remember, don't resist the calling in your heart. The world needs what you have to offer. And if you ever need someone to remind you that the scary step is usually the right step, give me a call." As Maya walked out into the cool October evening, she realized that her story had come full circle in the best possible way. She was no longer the person who had sat in that boardroom feeling powerless and overlooked. She was someone who had learned to create her own opportunities, and in doing so, had opened doors for countless others to do the same. The whispered words that had changed her life, "Don't resist," had become a bridge that others could cross into their own transformation. And that, Maya knew, was the real measure of success.